Welcome to Uranet Foundation debate on the future of European cinema. Today's debate is being broadcast live online and on air with our partner channels. You can be part of the debate posting on our Facebook page, and you can send questions to our guests using the hashtag CurtainsUpEurope. The European Union's Creative Europe programme makes a substantial contribution to European cinema. It aims to strengthen Europe's cultural and creative sectors, and it's seen as vital to the development and promotion and distribution of European films. Creative Europe was launched in January 2014 with a budget of almost €1.5 billion over 7 years. Joining us to discuss the role cinema plays in European culture and economy, Michel Magnier, Director of Culture and Creativity at the European Commission's Directorate-General for Education and Culture, Carlo Cresto-Dina, producer of The Wonders, winner of the Jury Grand Prix at this year's Cannes Film Festival, André, Lange, head of the Department of Information and Markets and Financing at the Council of Europe's European Audiovisual Observatory, and film director Daniel Mans, whose first film, Between Summer and Fall, is about to commence post-production. We're also joined by students from the Uranet Foundation University Circle, Ilana Panzer from the University of Tampere in Finland, and Alexandra Băreiran from UBB in Romania. Today also we have Letitia Markakis joining us, who will take care of our social media input, and you can send your messages directly to her. Hi Letitia.
Hi Brian, and hello everybody. Yes indeed, I will be following up all your comments, reactions and questions on our social media. So if you want to join and participate, just use the hashtag CurtainsUpEurope on Facebook and Twitter. Let's start.
Thanks Letitia. We're going to go through 6 different topics today and give Europe a really great idea of what it takes to make a film and what it takes to get it distributed. We're going to start with the concept of what is European cinema. Michel Magnier, what is European cinema?
Well, first of all, it's the cinema which is produced by the European countries. It has a specific value for us because it's the expression of our cultural identity, so we want to promote it, we want it to circulate widely, we want to export it to the rest of the world. So that's not something you define easily, but that's something which is very dear to the heart of all European citizens.
Okay, André Lange, is it as easy to define as that?
Well, there are plenty of definitions of what is one European film, and I will not go into details because it may lead to very difficult discussion, legal, political, statistical.
Kind of like that.
But let's say that for us at the Observatory, we are in charge of providing statistics on the European film market. So we have a very pragmatical definition of what is European film. It's a film produced in Europe. No, you can discuss it as a 28 Europe, or is it the enlarged Europe, the Council of Europe, including Russia, including Turkey, including Georgia. But there is one problem, major statistical problem, which is economic and political one. It's, do you consider US films produced in Europe as European or not? And there are various views in Europe on this, and if you count James Bond or Harry Potter as British or as more American than British, you have complete different statistics.
Okay. Carlo, what's your view? What is European film?
Well, it's very difficult to say. It's like asking, what is poetry?
What is poetry?
Well, what is poetry? Poetry is prophecy in a way, the ability to read the present and to interpret it. Well, yes, I would say that I see as distinctive in European cinema an effort to spread knowledge through cinema, not just entertain, and to ask difficult questions about who we are. I like the idea that cinema is a very important tool to define and build a European identity, but I also like the idea that identities are not fixed, are not given, that identities are a process. And when we try to freeze them in a single definition, to me they become a little bit dangerous sometimes.
Okay, Daniel, the German experience of filmmaking as well, does this give you an appreciation of what European filmmaking is about?
I think European filmmaking is, everybody makes a film in the country from which he comes from. So I by definition made a German movie, but what does that mean? I think as a filmmaker you try to express yourself, and not necessarily think so much about what culture you represent, because you're basically trying to tell a story, and if that's not a story that's fixed on something that can only be told in your country or has some historic context, then you're making first and foremost a film, and only by definition a European film or a German film or from whatever country you come from. And I don't think that these things have to be exclusive, that European films have to be more social, with more social value, and but they can also entertain with that.
Does language matter?
I think that's a huge problem with European films, because that's the dominance of English-speaking films. I mean, that's the language we're speaking here,
Yeah.
no matter where we come from. And then you have this problem of, are people going to watch films with subtitles?
Okay. Iliana, what do you think? What's European cinema for you?
As we see, it's really hard to say what's European film. I think it's maybe the definition that you said, European movie is film that is produced in Europe. But I don't think that if Americans come here to make a film, it isn't European film anymore.
Okay, Alexandra, for you, what do you think European film is?
For me, European cinema means culture, possibility to develop new skills, to promote talented people.
Okay, Carlo, the sense of who we are today, are we non-American, or have we rejected so much of American culture that we can separate ourselves from that, or is there anything which is truly European anymore?
I grew up in a small town in North Italy, and there was this game or joke that we used to do when we were younger. It was, which are the borders of our little town? Where does our town ends? And where does the countryside starts? And everybody had a different definition. But when you are in the city, you know that you are there. So it's a little bit like that. And, you know, what we are is something that, again, is difficult to define, but you can feel, you can perceive.
Yeah.
I was thinking while listening all these opinions that the more relevant a film or a director or a producer become, the less nationalities. Our brothers are then Belgian? Nah, they're European. Is Haneke Belgian? Is Nanni Moretti Belgian, Matteo Garrone, or is, Italian, or Matteo Garrone Italian, and so on? Is Ken Loach British? I don't know. I like the idea that they are all European directors. In the film we make, try their best to be European.
Michel, are we dealing with nationality or philosophy, intellectual positioning?
Yeah, that's very difficult, honestly. I mean, I think we're all aware of the fact that there's a specificity of the European cinema. That's not only entertainment, that's not only a product, that's also part of our culture, as I said. And that's why when we discuss free trade with the United States, we impose that we don't discuss cinema at all. We don't want cinema to be subject to the rules of free trade.
Well, we didn't, the French imposed.
We the Europeans, because we have the feeling that there's a different understanding of what cinema is on the other side of the Atlantic. So we don't want this to be part of a bigger free trade space. We want to keep that for us.
Okay, Daniel, when you see Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, Mr. Clooney, the recently married Mr. Clooney, coming to Europe to make sometimes more philosophical films, sometimes films with a stronger message, how does that mess up our perception of what a European film is?
I have to agree with what was said before, that it's still an American film, because I think that's more the way of how it's marketed. And I mean, these are, in that terms, less cultural subvention payments, but business incentives.
Okay.
And
But do you really think that in this stage of their careers, Angelina Jolie in particular, is making films which are based on a financial gain, or is she trying to make statements which are really more in line with a European philosophy?
I think in that particular case, it's difficult to say, but there are many productions that come to Europe. For example, I mean, we have that in Germany with the Babelsberg Studios,
Okay.
where a lot of American films are produced, and I mean, they get German funding, cultural funding,
Okay.
and sometimes I think the lines are difficult to say.
Okay.
Where is it cultural funding and where is it as a business incentive?
André, on the funding issue as well, do you define European film according to the percentage of funding and where that originates from?
Yeah, for the statistics, we take the nationality of the producer or the main producer in case of co-production, which sometimes leads to paradox. My favorite example was the film by Youssef Chahine, the great Egyptian filmmaker. He was mainly produced by a French producer. So from a statistical point of view, Chahine films, really the expression of Egypt culture, are French. The statistics, economic statistics for this has a limit in the possibility of analyzing the cultural exchange. On the contrary, well, if you take Harry Potter is produced mainly by Warner money, but the script is British, the casting is British, the special effects are British, and it's financed basically with a fiscal incentive in UK. So the British say it's British, though it's European.
Okay.
Of course, from a continental point of view, we may be a bit more reluctant, but it's one example of the difficulty of defining the things.
Okay. Let's see if we have any input from our social media. Tisha.
Yes, Brian, actually, yes, we have quite a funny comment on Facebook from Annika Griezmann. She said, everyone is trying to copy the American movies and not the European movies. There is perhaps a reason. I prefer Patrick Jane than Derek. So maybe, Brian, one of your guests can just react on this comment.
Yeah, what do you think? Is the essence of the American filmmaking just more attractive?
It seems to be, but I don't think...
Why do you think that would be?
Because of its history. It has a long history, and the Hollywood thing and all those things, and the actors and the directors and so on. All know them, but all the European people
So
don't
it's brand
know.
recognition, really, knowing the actors,
I think that's...
so you can trust them.
yeah, maybe trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our second theme. We're going to talk about the market, how the EU cinema market operates. André, what's the structure of the market? How does it break down in terms of financing, in terms of, and just in general terms of finance, but also the kind of channels, distribution channels that we have, video on demand, cinema goers, this kind of thing?
Well, I think the first thing we have to say is that the European market is dominated by the US structure of distribution. US major studio for theatrical distribution, pay TV, which are mainly owned by American companies or groups. Now the VOD services in Europe, the leading one are under US control, whatever iTunes, Netflix, Google Play. The major problem for European films is to face this domination of the market. Now, I think one of the major problems is the fact that the national films which have success are mainly comedies. Comedies who could make millions of admissions. Very rarely comedies will circulate. You have the case of Intouchable, French comedy, of make I think 45 million admissions in the world, but it's really one exception. Some British comedies travel very well, but in general, a French comedy, one Italian comedy, a German comedy, not to speak of a Danish comedy or one Estonian comedy, will not travel. So my favorite argument is to say that Europe is divided by laugh. We don't laugh of the same thing. And of course, language is part of this. I mean, the humor is mainly through the language, and people do not understand. Translating humor with subtitles does not make laugh.
Okay.
And this is one of the major problems. And as a paradox, the film, the art house films, so the film d'auteur,
Okay.
which in general are much more serious, dramatic, on historical topic or in existential
let me ask,
crisis topic, circulate proportionally better than comedies. Of course, they have much less admissions, but they circulate better.
Okay, Carlo, you see this this positioning. Would you prefer to make a comedy for the European market or the global market, or would you prefer to make a more universal theme?
Well, comedies are difficult because humor is very much based on language. It's a challenge, would be a very interesting challenge to try to produce some sort of European humor.
We have it across the street.
We are at the moment trying to produce a film. We are about to produce a film on bilingualism in northern Italy. You may know that we have a region which is German, where they speak both German and Italian, and all the jokes that generate from all the possible misunderstanding. Let's see if it will...
but for you, would you make, when you're deciding, you're looking at the market, are you looking at admission sales to the cinema, or are you looking at pay TV? How do you see the market divided up if you really want to make it successful?
Well, it's changing a lot. I think that André can provide us with some statistic, but the number of downloads, I'm talking about legal downloads at the moment, is increasing dramatically year by year. So, and it's fascinating. It's a revolution that is going on under our feet, and sometimes we act as we don't perceive it, but it's happening. Box office is very important. We like very much the experience of the theater, and sharing the experience of watching a film on big screen. We producers spend a lot of money, our directors and authors spend a lot of energy on making the sound perfect, the image perfect, and then you see youngster watching your film on an iPhone. And most of are outraged, say, oh no, I say, okay, forget about it.
Okay.
Let them eat it. Let them nourish themselves with it.
Michel, to feed the people, what's the Commission's view of the diet of cinema across Europe? How does divide up on the menu?
Well, we would really like to increase circulation of European films. We just saw...
internally or externally?
Well, both, actually, but mostly internally. We think it's a pity that European films, they don't circulate within the EU in different countries.
Why do you think they don't circulate, other than language?
It's probably the language. I mean, there are also some cultural elements that people are not so much interested of local stories built for a local public. I think language is a problem. Either you subtitle films or you dub film, and in both cases there's a loss of substance for the film. And that's why the program you mentioned, Creative Europe, focuses very much on support to distribution of European films.
Okay, Daniel. The Danish series Borgen, perhaps you know it. It's in the UK. This is a phenomenal success. If you had said 10 years ago that a Danish political series was going to be one of the most watched programs in the UK when it's subtitled in English, spoken in the Danish language, which almost nobody outside Denmark understands, people wouldn't have said that would work, but it has worked. Is there something changing in Europe in terms of the market and how we distribute and how our cultural awareness is growing?
I mean, what the internet has brought us is not only the availability, which is one thing, and how that is developing right now. I mean, from how many people have already access to legal downloads and know how to use that, because, I mean, people are used to going to the cinema or just turning on their TV and seeing what is given to them. But now when the selection is more complex, I think it's rather difficult now, while it is so new, to see how that will be developing. But I think what the internet has definitely brought us is the awareness, because like 15 years ago, you didn't know that there was such a series in another country.
Brand awareness in a way?
Huh?
Is this accidental brand awareness?
I think it's the brand awareness is...
No,
I couldn't comment on that. I think what happened with the internet is that people have one way of telling each other, and then you have these phenomena where people suddenly say, "Oh, this is a series from Denmark, and this is great."
Ileana, your colleagues at university, do they watch more online or do they go to the cinema more?
Well, I actually made a bit of gallup, and most of them are watching from Netflix.
Okay.
But they also go to cinema sometimes. But
Okay.
I think the Netflix is the greatest thing.
Okay, Alexandra, your friends, where do they watch their cinema?
Online.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Letitia,
Yes, Brian.
any comments on the social media on this?
Actually, I've got an interesting one from Veronica on Facebook, who is calling for more promotion on European films. Raise awareness for European films while still in production, media days invitation to the set, etc. I'm a film journalist at RTV Slovene National Radio and TV, and I get tons of info on USA films in advance, but on European films, not so much. So why?
Okay, so we'll come back to that a little bit when we're talking about distribution as well. The problems of the knowledge, just like Daniel was talking about, the knowledge of the product and being able to access it from there. We're going to move on to a third theme, the finance. We're going to start with André this time. How is European cinema financed?
Well, there are various ways, but one general characteristic of European films is that they are largely supported by public money, or let's say public schemes to support the production. There are various ways. There is direct funding, and the direct funding may be based on money collected from the lottery. This is the case in UK or in Finland. It may be based on levies on the revenues of distributors, exhibitors, broadcasters. Now also there is debate on levies on the revenues of VOD operators. These go in a national fund who will distribute the money to the producer. And there is also more and more, and we will just release a study on this next week, system of fiscal incentives.
Okay.
Tax rebate, tax shelter.
It seems to work well for Ireland, doesn't it?
In Ireland, in Belgium, in France, also now in the Eastern European countries, in Czech Republic, Hungary, even the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, to attract foreign investment. Also in Eastern Europe, the US studio like to go in Prague or in Budapest to shot films.
Let's ask Carlo how he got his money. Where'd your money come from?
Well, the picture that André presented is very much what I see in my daily struggle to get financed. 2 points though. Film is an industry that occupies a lot of people, that sustains hundreds of thousands of families, and it's, at least in Italy, increasing occupation. We're all desperate to find, jobs. And this is something that, this is an industry that it's growing in terms of occupation. So public funding is not just, but is smart. André can confirm that every single public euro spent in cinema returns in terms of social contribution 5 or 6 folds, more or less, which is one of the industry with the highest return to the taxpayers. Let me show you something. You see this little thing here, it's called iPhone. Well, there is a study which says that all the essential patents that make this little object work were paid by public money. What I'm trying to say that in advanced capitalism, there is not a single industry that exists without public sustain. Oh, but what about American independent film? Well, they are all funded by public money because they are all funded to private tax, deduction. So I should pay taxes, so I have in my pocket some money which is public, I should give it to the public, but no, I decide to give it to my friend to make a film, probably because my daughter is going to play the lead role in the film, or my son is going to be the runner. So again, there are no myths. There is no good cinema around the world which is not funded by public money, and what they are doing is essential.
Okay, you're getting some praise today for good work, well done.
For once.
your press release on that. Michel, how do you see the funding structure? What is it that, your pyramid, what's at the top and what's at the bottom of your structure?
Well, what's on the bottom is production. We don't want to invest in production because, as was said, member states and various schemes do fund production. By the way, we produce an awful lot of films in the EU, in Europe. I mean, more than 1,500 films every year. And not all of these films actually reach a screen, which is a pity. So they don't reach any audience.
Okay.
So we don't want to add to this situation. So we mainly focused on distribution. So we help films to circulate across the EU. And now we start investing in development because there's no good film with a proper development at the beginning. And that's where you can add value by public funding at this level.
Okay, very good. Daniel, your financing story, we're going to talk a little bit later about this as well, but briefly your experience of trying to get finance for your products.
It's difficult to at least in our experience, it is difficult to find funding. For one thing, you have to figure out which subsidies are out there. You have to be very knowledgeable, and not everything applies for you. For example, in European.
So you need to be a funding expert. So
yeah, you have to be an expert. I mean, there were parts where we really just were very reluctant because every time we looked something up, we were not applicable for that certain thing because we had to be a co-production with that country or in that.
But most entrepreneurs, for example, outside the film industry, would say the first time they try it, they break their heart over it and probably it doesn't work. And Michel was talking about the failure rate of films as well. And yet we're seeing some real returns on the financial side as well in terms of tax invested. This is something for you to consider for the future. Do you feel stronger now to go to the next phase and look for more funding?
I think, as he said earlier, it's always a struggle, and with every project it's different, and there is this.
Do you feel like an entrepreneur?
In some ways, but mostly I'm in it to tell a story, to make a film. I mean, it is an industry, and I wouldn't make a film that I'm not confident in that it's valuable as a film that could be promoted and sold. But in a way, I'm more of a storyteller.
Let's check in with Letitia. Any comments?
Yes, Brian, we've got a comment from Zanetta. She's wondering how to support young directors. She's asking if it's possible to create any platform for young artists who, for example, thanks to Erasmus, can just share their experience all together.
Okay, which brings us on to our next theme, in fact, skills and training. Let's start with Daniel. Skills and training, the Youth Guarantee, for example, which is was supposed to be Europe's big idea for getting unemployed youth into jobs 4 months after leaving university, for example. The idea is to match skills with the jobs market. Do you feel that the skill sets that you were given through education, through training, are really suited to the market that you're working in now?
I mean, it's very difficult to say because everybody tries to find a different niche for themselves, and not only what part of the film industry, whether you're a cameraman or an editor or so on, is a part of that, but also where you would want to go. You want to go more into documentary films or fiction films, and so that's something where.
When you're looking for a team, do you see the skill set around you that you know you can really get a great job done and do it in a sensible way? You're looking for a cameraman, you're looking for the people who will edit at the end. Do you see the skill sets there to produce a great film?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Carlo, you see the skill sets in your marketplace which are at the level they should be?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it's very interesting because in recent years, a number of new programs to form and to prepare and to train producers came up, like EAVE, ACE. And I think this is very important because we sometimes tend to focus on the skills either of directors or the crew, but the specific job of producing films is vital to the industry, and I think it's very important that we form new producer with new ideas that will topple us when it will be time.
Okay.
With new ideas.
Ileana, do you see skill sets in your group being developed, or you're just not sure what's going to happen at the end of the education process?
I don't know. I don't actually know, because I think...
You're not at the other end of that process yet?
Yeah, because
Okay.
if you ask from students, they always find something that they want to know.
Okay.
Something more they want to know.
Okay. Alexander, do you think your student colleagues are ready for the job market, ready for the cinematic market?
Yes, I think yes.
Okay, that's a pretty confident answer. All right. André, do you see from your statistics that people are moving in the right direction with the skill sets? Do you see evidence of this in the market?
Well, we have we didn't make any studies on really the workers. It's very difficult to obtain data on unemployment. It's a terrible methodological problem, so I cannot really comment on this. But we'd like to come back to the issue of financing, because we have not yet spoken of one of the major players in film production. It's TV. In most of the country, important part of the financing of films is done by the broadcaster.
Okay.
Pre-sales or in direct investment. The systems are very different country by country. In some countries like France, it's by law that the broadcaster have to invest in production. In some other countries, it's more agreement between the association of producer and the broadcaster, but they are major players.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next theme, catch up on some time, and we're going to talk about the reality check, the day-to-day reality for directors. Start with Carlo. What's it like starting at the beginning and getting a film made at the end?
As a director?
Yeah. As a producer as well.
As a producer, I mean, there are no recipes. It's an industry that produces prototypes. So every time you start again, kind of thing. But I would say that if the only strategy is about trying to do something that is deeply unique and original, try to do something that nobody else can do. And in a way, I think this is also a good suggestion for the industry in general. If we really want to defend the European film industry, it is all about making films that nobody else can do.
Okay, let's ask Michel. Is this something you're looking for in terms of content, quality, originality?
Not so much, actually, because it's very difficult to define quality. I mean,
but you know it when you see it.
Yeah. It's an industry, so one of the criteria is, of course, the bottom line, whether the film makes money or not, but it doesn't say anything on quality. You have some indicators like, is the film showed in festivals, for instance? Does it get good reviews? The box office is obviously a criterion. It's very difficult because, again, we are so diverse. Films come from 30, 35 countries, 40 countries maybe. It's difficult to have a single criterion. It's easier for the Americans, honestly. I mean, they have recipes for good films, they have recipes for success. Sometimes it works out.
We try too hard to be original in Europe?
Sometimes we try. I mean, if you look at Lucy, for instance, the film from Luc Besson, it's probably a French film, I would say, but it's typically an American thing in terms of the recipes which were used.
He sold out then, did he? Or you're not going to comment? Fine. André, you see the day-to-day reality of the directors at the big scale. Do you appreciate what it takes to get into your statistics at the end? Is that success level?
Well, you know, when elaborating statistics and being on the same time, I think I am a cinephile, sometimes it's very tragic, because films that you like, and when you see the statistics, they have done 2,100 admissions.
Okay.
And when stupidities make millions of admissions. And just to give one idea, some kind of average success at the European level for art house films from a film with awards in Cannes. Let's take the example of the La Vie d'Adèle. In blue is the warmest color, who won the Palme d'Or last year in Cannes. It makes around 2 million admissions for the whole Europe. And it's 2 million of admissions. It's a normal level for films with a Palme d'Or in Cannes. Will be a bit more if it's Polanski, if it's Terrence Malick, but it's dramatic because it means that the films receiving the major award in Europe attract only 2 million people in the theaters. Of course, other people will see the film on TV, on video, on VOD, pirate version, but only 2 million persons will go to see.
I don't know how many people are illegally downloading Polanski films. That would be an interesting statistic.
You would be surprised.
Okay, Daniel, also, the day-to-day reality of this. Tell us briefly your story.
With our film?
Yeah.
We went, I mean, we had only, or we saw, I mean, as I said, I'm not sure that we're aware of every European funding possibilities, but we were a small production without any TV money involved.
You start with friends or colleagues? How did it work?
Yeah, and so we founded a small production company because we wanted really to make this
do it seriously, do it professionally.
And so we tried to get funding.
How long did it take you to make the film? How long did it take you to make the film to this point?
I don't, a couple of years at least.
Okay.
We've been working on getting the money together the last 2 or 3 years, yeah.
That's pretty tough going.
Yeah.
Alexander, would you be interested in making a film, taking a couple of years to do it and still not seeing a result at the end?
No.
I don't think so. Okay, it takes a special kind of courage, I think, to do this. It's really something. Letitia, what have we got on social media?
Yes, Brian, maybe I want to highlight the last comment maybe of today. So of Giorgio, he asks why we always ask Europe to do everything. Is it not a matter for the national level after all? We have 28 cultures in Europe, he stressed. So why are we trying to create just one European culture?
Okay, I just want Michel to answer this, then we're going to move on to our next topic. Shouldn't this just be at the national level?
Well, it is largely at national level because the national and regional level brings 20 times more than we do bring with the European schemes. But if we don't intervene, who will take care of transnational circulation of films? I mean, there's a gap here.
It's a single market.
It's a single market, but if we don't promote European films, as we discussed before, nobody will buy them. So there needs to be a support to distribution, and that's where the European added value is. At the same time, when we do it, it's very nice. I mean, we promote cultural diversity. We're all very much in favor of that. But we also create new sources of revenues for producers, directors, all the operators of cinema industry. So that's also good for our economy. We're looking for growth and jobs everywhere. So this is a sector which brings a tremendous amount of jobs in the EU.
Okay. Let's move on to how to expand European cinema within the EU and globally as well. Short answers on this. Just tell me your best ideas. How do we make a bigger impact? Daniel, what do you think we need to do to make a bigger impact with European cinema in the EU and outside?
I mean, when we we always distinguish between European and American cinema. Basically, these are the two opposites that we've come out. And what it boils down to is two things, I think: advertising and acceptance. Because I think most people are more, American films have more money invested and a more established way of advertising them. So everybody's aware of them. And
you think they're better at making films or just better at advertising?
I wouldn't demonize American films. I really like, and I wouldn't usually make this distinction between European
you think we just need to be better at the advertising side of it?
The advertising is definitely better.
Okay.
Everybody's aware of this, and the other thing is really that we have different levels of acceptance in Europe of people seeing those films. For example, in France, people are much more willing to see French films.
Okay.
Than for example, they have been a long time.
This may be a reason why the French broadcasting authorities seem to invest much more in the film industry compared with other countries, André. What would you do, in a nutshell, what would you do to expand our reach within Europe and outside? the European market? What would you do to expand the European cinema market inside Europe and outside?
Well, inside of Europe, I think the major thing to develop, in my opinion, is to develop film literacy, to teach people, young people, to watch films from other countries, from other cultures, from other way of telling stories. The 2 million people going to see the Palme d'Or is not enough, and we have to convince people that if a film won the major awards, it's worth to be seen, and to approach these films, it needs some preparation, it needs some intellectual training from the public.
Carlo, you optimistic enough to believe that intellectual training in the public will shift our market?
Well, yes, and also there is something to understand. I have no solution, to be honest, but at the moment I think that the rules that regulate distribution in theaters and distribution online, what we call windows, that are fantastic to protect theaters, and I completely agree with that, but sometimes tend to be a little bit strict. I really believe in offer. I really think that if a film, the best way to combat and win piracy is offering a wide legal selection of films for everybody.
Okay, Michel, we still don't have really a copyright law which permits a single market when it comes to film distribution, do we?
Well, we need to update it at least, because the current framework dates back to 2001. So, I mean, at the time there was no online distribution, so we need to update it definitely.
Okay, Letitia, social media, what do we got?
Yeah, the last comment, maybe from Florin, who is wondering if the TTIP, the Trade International Agreement with the United States, will possibly maybe kill the European film industry. What do you think?
Okay, France was really sensitive about this. I'll go back to Michel for this. TTIP, good or bad for European cinema?
Well, I mean, it's good for the European economy insofar as we don't discuss cinema with the Americans, because then the discussion is unbalanced. And obviously, if we have a free trade area, we can say hello and goodbye to the European cinema.
Okay. You have one idea for this, Elena?
No, but I have one question.
Yes.
Actually, I want to know what are the 3 greatest challenges of European movie today? Because we talk about a little bit about it, but I want 3 specific things that are the greatest.
We'll do 4 in fact, and we'll do 1 short answer. André, what's the biggest challenge?
I think for me the major risk for the industry is currently the European or worldwide circulation of video-on-demand services, which are not regulated sometimes by European or national law, and those services do not have to contribute to the funding. So for a national broadcaster or a national provider of VOD services, is obliged to contribute to the national fund, is obliged to invest in production, but competitors coming from other countries, coming from directly from the US or coming from countries like Luxembourg, or Netflix is based in Netherlands, without any obligation, are in better position to compete without obligation. And I think this is a major risk, because then the national stakeholders will ask a reduction of the obligations, and this is a major risk for the funding of the
Daniel, what do you think is the biggest challenge and biggest risk facing European cinema?
As I said before, I think it's perception. It's really how we perceive that, because we have made this distinction between something that's entertaining. We had this example of the last Luc Besson film, because it was almost too entertaining. I mean, if I boil that down a little, is it really that? Does European cinema only have to be this or that, and what is that?
Okay,
and I think that's.
We got just over a minute left. Carlo, in 10 seconds, what's the biggest challenge European cinema faces?
Make good, popular films.
Okay.
The top box office in 1964 was Rocco and His Brothers by Luchino Visconti. There were divas, stars in it, and it was a wonderful piece of art. And people went to see it. Why? Because it was fantastic.
Okay, Michel, biggest risk, biggest challenge?
Well, I think the risk is that we don't manage to get adapted to the new digital world. That's basically the major challenge for us.
Okay, let me just thank our guests, Michel Magnier, Carlo Cresto-Dina, André Lange, Daniel Mans. Thank you, and our students, Ilana Panzer and Alexander Boeran from Romania also. Our discussion today has been broad. There is a lot which is misunderstood about cinema in Europe, but there's a lot of optimism. Small fighters who are more nimble have an opportunity for new markets, for niche markets, and Europe has a lot of small markets which, positioned right, could put themselves in line for new opportunities. With the right skills, the right training, and the right opportunities supported by national broadcasters, the European Commission, crowdsourced when this opportunity arises as well. But for a new generation of cinema, we have global examples of real success within Europe. We also see more Americans coming to Europe to make big productions. Game of Thrones, made in Europe, one of the most successful series. Borgen translating across a language barrier which no one would have believed before. Subtitles are not a trade barrier any longer. Thank you for your attention today. Thank you, Letitia, for your contribution also, and our commentators on social media.
Thanks, Brian.
The future of European cinema is bright.